You've got potentially a predatory for-profit company gaming the system at this fat, bloated government agency that wouldn't know if it was getting stolen from if its life depended on this bloated Medicare system. What do you think at this point the fraud and waste at Medicare and Medicaid is, doctor? Is it 30%? I mean, this is why we have a problem.
Well, that problem is now being looked into by the Department of Justice, which has launched a civil investigation into United Health, with federal prosecutors accusing the private insurer of overcharging the Medicare system and ripping off American taxpayers. Now, the DOJ civil fraud investigation is looking into United Health's practice of recording diagnoses that trigger extra payments to its Medicare Advantage plans, which of course are privately run but publicly funded healthcare plans for this nation's elderly. And I can't wait to give you the details on it. But Cenk, do you think this is real? You think that Trump's DOJ is gonna carry out this investigation?
So the Biden administration started it. They're continuing it for now. I'm crossing my fingers, but Pam Bondi has a certain history that I'm worried about. So we can get into that history, but first you should find out what they're doing, because for the moment being, it's fantastic.
For the moment being, it is fantastic. And the Wall Street Journal, which has been really focusing on this story, reported that as recently as January 31st, doctors and nurses who have been kind of caught up in this scandal have been interviewed by federal prosecutors about this. Now, let's get to some of the details. As I mentioned, when it comes to Medicare Advantage, that is a privately run but publicly funded Medicare plan. And there have been many stories accusing private insurers of engaging in fraud in order to make money off the Medicare system, which then rips off the American taxpayer. Insurers do get a lump sum payments from the federal government to oversee Medicare enrollees' benefits, but they get paid more for certain diagnoses, which incentivizes the practice of diagnosing patients with more diseases, even if they don't have said illnesses. So that's the accusation here. Now, in December, the Wall Street Journal found that patients examined by United Health employed doctors actually had a pretty huge increase in lucrative diagnoses after joining the company's Medicare Advantage plans. Doctors said United Health, based in the Minneapolis area, trained them to document revenue-generating diagnoses, including some they felt were obscure or irrelevant. The company also used software to suggest conditions and paid bonuses for considering the suggestions, among other tactics. And that's according to some of the doctors that the Wall Street Journal had interviewed for their reporting. Now, in addition to that, the journal's reporting found that United Health allegedly added diagnoses or conditions to patients' medical records without the patients even knowing about it and without the patients even receiving any treatment for these conditions. And the Wall Street Journal claims that that alone triggered an extra $8.7 billion in federal payments in 2021 alone. So you want to talk about government waste, fraud, and abuse? These are the areas where I would like to see a lot more focus by the Trump administration. Again, this was an investigation that was launched under the Biden administration, but it appears that for now, the Trump DOJ is continuing with that investigation, and I hope they continue to do so. The untreated diagnoses, by the way, stem from sources including in-home visits by nurses working for the company's house calls unit. Each visit by the United Health employed nurses was worth an average of $2,735 in additional federal payments, a journal analysis of Medicare data spanning 2019 through 2021 found. And as a result, last month, Justice Department lawyers from the offices of the US Attorney for Minnesota and the Washington, D.C. based civil division spoke to at least 3 doctors. So this was on January 31st, and 1 nurse that the Wall Street Journal actually wrote about. So as an example, Valerie O'Meara a nurse practitioner who worked for United Health in Washington State, said she was interviewed on January 31st by Justice Department attorneys who were interested in the company's software that suggested diagnoses and the role of a United Health manager who she said urged her to make new diagnoses beyond what doctors had treated. So super interested to see how this all really plays out. But just to give you a little more clarity, I want to go to this video featuring a Stanford professor. His name is Dr. Robert Pearl, and he kind of explains the distinctions in which the Medicare system is billed for certain diagnoses by private insurers like United Health, who have Medicare Advantage plans. Let's take a look.
You have to differentiate what you're calling billing codes, which is I see you in the office because you have a broken arm and I fix the broken arm and I bill for that, as opposed to the way that United Healthcare is being paid by the federal government, which is what the allegations are about, which is specific to Medicare Advantage. There they get paid a set fee. We call it a capitation to take care of a patient. And it's based upon how risky, how likely it is the patient's going to become sick. So if they're adding on diagnoses, but they haven't yet manifested in a medical problem, that's okay. If they're adding on diagnoses that didn't exist or exaggerating the diagnoses that do exist, that is not both improper and illegal.
Yeah, I think that incentive structure is insane. It's bananas. So essentially, the private insurer is predicting that this patient is going to develop some illness, and Medicare gets billed for that, even though we don't know if that patient is necessarily going to have that illness.
Yeah, no, this structure is wrong for sure. So they've got to fix, there's two different problems, guys. Fixing the structure and then fixing the fraud, the alleged fraud at United Health. So first I'm gonna go to a member, Vita Del Set at TYT.com said, Medicare Advantage is the charter school of medical insurance. And that's both a hilarious and poignant analogy.
Yep.
So nicely done. Love having the smartest audience. So now on the things that they build, the very specific one that Anna mentioned a little while ago, where the patients didn't know that they theoretically had this condition and did not receive treatment for that condition, and they billed it anyway, and that was $8.7 billion worth of what appears to be massive fraud.
In 1 year.
Yeah, and if they catch that and that is true and they prove it, this shouldn't be civil, it should be criminal. I mean, if you stole $87, you'd have trouble. $8,700, you'd have a lot of trouble. You steal $8.7 billion, I don't give a goddamn that you did it in a suit. And I don't care that you gave some of the proceeds to a bunch of corrupt politicians. Here, credit to Biden and Trump. Rare situation where that happens for this investigation. Let's hope that it gets to the end, and I'm not sure that it will. But there's no justification for it not being criminal to steal, especially at this level. And by the way, progressives would love it. MAGA would love it.
Yes.
Okay,
it's our money.
It's our money, and they're stealing it. Yes,
exactly.
And of course, the people who wouldn't love it generally are politicians who get bribed by these people. I mean, campaign contributions, which leads us to Pam Bondi. Now she's running the Department of Justice now under Trump, and Pam Bondi has an unfortunate history, which I really hope she does not repeat here, which is she'll start an investigation, and then somebody that she started the investigation on, either a person or a company, will then send her a campaign contribution, and then she will end the investigation. So that does two things. One, it gives her the appearance of fighting for justice. Oh, I'm starting all these investigations, right? And two, it gives her a lot of campaign contributions. So she starts investigations over and over again, and as soon as she receives the contribution, she ends them. She did it with Trump, and that's how they got to know each other. She started an investigation of Trump University, and then he sent her a check, and then she immediately ended it. This was a long time ago, right?
Can you receive donations as the head of the DOJ, as Attorney General?
So no, that's a great question and point. No, in this case, she couldn't directly because she's not running for any office, it's not an elected office,
right,
et cetera. But they sent a giant check to Donald Trump, to the Republican Party, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like Pam Bondi's not going to hear that.
Right, of course.
Right, they're gonna call her and tell her the bribe is in the mail. So we're gonna need you to shut that down and say, oh, it was Biden and what a dummy, and oh my God, he's trying to punish poor American corporations who have America's best interests at heart and ruin the economy and drive up inflation, and we won't stand for that. We're gonna protect the average American by continuing to rob the average American. So that's how it would go, but that has not happened yet. And so far, the Trump administration is continuing this investigation, so we give them credit for that now.
For now, yeah, they deserve credit for now. But let me just be clear, if they decide to back off this investigation of private insurers that are very likely defrauding the American taxpayer, then I'm sorry, they have no credibility in regard to their agenda in cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Because you want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, there is a lot of it impacting our Medicare system.
Yeah, and guys, and if they start misdirecting you, don't let them do that, because Medicare is great. It is intensely popular. The American people love it. This is Medicare Advantage, and it is private companies that are ripping off the average American, not the government.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm worried that they're gonna end the investigation, because usually when it's private companies ripping off the government, that's called politics. And so, at least, unfortunately, in America, where bribery is basically legalized. So they finish this and they do a massive penalty on these guys, or in my dream of dreams, lock up a couple of guys. I'm gonna give them all the credit in the world, but we're all gonna see what they do with our own eyes.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.